Welcome to the Hard Faith Podcast. I'm your host, Spencer Fulmar, the founder of Hard Faith. I've been working in the film and television industry for over 16 years. On Hard Faith, we're about asking difficult questions about life and faith in an R-rated world.
And today we're doing our first ever live recording in person with my good friend and brother, Alan Smith. Alan is our real-life Saint Nick. He is what Saint Nick of Bethlehem is based off of, and Sad Santa and the Healing Power of Giving documentary is based on his life. I've known Alan for the majority of my life, at least half of it.
I was going to say about 14 years now.
14, 15 years.
Something like that.
Yeah. Mostly through my good friend Isaac March, started off, I think, right?
Yep.
He's been on multiple film sets. You'll see him even in Generational Sins. He's into hardware shopping.
Yep.
But yeah, I've known Alan for a long time. And in fact, the story for Saint Nick of Bethlehem started at Isaac's wedding. And Alan and I were drinking beers together.
And smoking cigars.
The night before his wedding. And Alan shared with me how he had started playing Santa Claus in our hometown in central Pennsylvania. Can you share with our audience a little bit about how you started as Santa Claus?
In 2014, my uncle passed away just before Thanksgiving, like 3 days before Thanksgiving. My family was in a very somber mood, I guess, during the holidays, because my uncle was the card of the family. The clown, I guess, would be the best way to word it. And so nobody felt like it. So the week before Christmas, I went and bought a cheap Santa suit. And I went and delivered a case of beer to everybody on Christmas Eve. And I said, Merry Christmas from Santa. And half of them knew who I was and half of them didn't. And they came home and there was a case of beer sitting by their front door. And that's how it started. And I think that was also, I don't remember if it was that same year or if it was the second year, then Gina and I started dating. And then she asked me if I would take a dozen roses to her great nephew, whose dad was killed in a car accident earlier in the year. And when he went to the mall Santa, he asked for a dozen roses for Christmas. And Santa was like, boy, that's kind of odd for a 9-year-old boy to want flowers for Christmas. And he said, what do you plan on doing with the dozen roses? He said, I want to put them on Daddy's grave. So at 9 o'clock Christmas morning, I showed up at the house with 18 roses and we walked down to his dad's grave. And that's how it started. And little did I know at that point in time, because Garrett was still alive and no problems. And, as he places the roses on his dad's grave and he said, I love you, Daddy, Merry Christmas. And I was fighting back tears, just like I am even now recalling the story. And little did I know that a couple years later that I would be battling my own. Oh, and then little did we know that a few years later, you'd have your battle.
Yeah.
Sorry, I need a beer after that.
Me too. What first, drew me to your story, Alan, is you hear, when you see Miracle on 34th Street, you see the Macy's Santa, and you see, the commercialized Santa. And what I loved about your story is, as I started pitching this story and thinking about how to write this screenplay, it was the Santa Claus that we all need, actually need. We don't need more and more and more and more gifts. We need a Santa Claus when we feel sad and when we feel depressed and when we have nothing. And it's the Santa Claus to lowly people, Santa Claus to people most in need. Even just delivering beers, to your family whenever they were experiencing loss. That's the kind of Santa Claus, that's the story I wanted to bring to the screen. And you were doing this before you tragically lost your only son.
Yep.
And it was just an anniversary, was it yesterday?
Of Thursday.
Thursday.
So 3 days ago now. That's 6 years.
Since you lost him.
Yep, from the day that I lost him. And I know this might not make it great on camera, but there's his tattoo that I got. The year he was born, 12/8/95, and they died 9/18 of 2019.
And how old was he when he passed away?
23. He would be 30 this December.
Wow. I can't believe it's already been 6 years.
Yep.
I remember whenever...
And you had started even having this story prior to that ever happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, you had set the ball into motion even then.
Yeah, I was already trying to write a screenplay and trying to figure out how I would write a script about Alan Smith as Santa Claus. And it's sort of a tough script because whenever you think of a Christmas movie, you think of, the typical kind of Hallmark Christmas movie. You think of, the romantic couple, the lady finds out that her boyfriend's Santa Claus, Hallmark, generic, PG, family-friendly, happy all the time Christmas. But, Alan's story started off as a hard faith story, a Santa Claus to lowly people, a story I really wanted to tell. And then, the thing that was most shocking to me about the way the story turned out is I remember so distinctly on Facebook seeing the post when you said, "Please pray, my son is on his way to the hospital."
He was just stung by a bee.
Yeah. And then, hours later that he had passed away from allergic reaction.
Yep.
And this is in the end of September, and you had been Santa Claus for a few years at this point.
Well, 4 years, 3 years, 5 years.
Yeah.
Well, you figure this will be year number 12.
Yeah.
It was 6 years.
6 years you'd already been Santa Claus. And if I was in your shoes and I was being Santa Claus and bringing all this joy to kids, and I had just lost my only child at 23 years old, there is no way possible that I would be able to celebrate Christmas probably ever again, let alone be Santa Claus again in 3 months. And yet, miraculously, that next Christmas, 3 months later, after burying your son,
2 months.
2 months later,
In November, I started.
yeah, you were Santa Claus, and like the name of the documentary is Sad Santa, but you're not Sad Santa to the kids and to all the people you bring joy to. You're Saint Nick. But how on earth could you possibly be Santa Claus that first year?
It was hard. It was. The way that I raised my son, and you've heard me say this on the set of the movie, to everybody that was there working, you guys busted your tails on that movie for 16, 18, 20 hours a day, rain, middle of the night, everything else. And I wanted you to realize the effort that you guys were putting out was very appreciated by me, because that first it was like 7 weeks to my first Santa appearance after Garrett had passed. And I raised my son to always overcome the hardships of life. I mean, I haven't had an easy life. He was 12 years old. My former marriage was wrecked. I had no money because I was paying all the back bills and everything else that we didn't have. But you still have to live. And I'm not going to live in misery. I'm not going to do it. So I had called my one photographer that I worked with prior to, and I told him, I said, I don't know if I can be Santa this year. And he understood it. He said, I'll see if I can find somebody else. He said, but take a few days and think about it. And I am a man of very strong faith. I don't go to church. I don't personally believe in the houses that men build for the faith of God. But when I want to talk to God, I go out to the woods. That's what my dad used to do. And that's what I did. And I went for a nice long walk out in the woods. And I just talked to God, to the things that he had made, the trees, the leaves, the animals. And I sat on a stump and I bawled my eyes out for hours. And I even said out loud, God, I don't know if I can do it this year, because I definitely didn't feel good about it. But then it's, as I sat there, and I don't know if it was the voice of God, the Spirit of God, I didn't hear it like I had in the past. But it was like, no, you have to do what you taught Garrett. And I taught Garrett to overcome those things, to overcome the hardships of life, because life isn't easy for anybody. I don't care who it is. You know, Paris Hilton has problems. She just pays a therapist to be able for hers. I can't afford that. So I sat there and I bawled my eyes out, and it's like, all right, I can't get the love from my own child anymore. I can't get hugs from him. I can't get the, hey dad, can I bum $10? Hey dad, I need some gas money. Hey dad, I need this. And I couldn't get the hugs and the love from him. So then I decided I'll get it from everybody else's kids, from the smiles that they have. Inside, I was torn up. But I also know that some of the kids that I see, I mean, they're poor families. They can't afford to be able to go out and have a good-looking Santa, you know, and have the professional photos done and everything. It's like, okay. So I still did it. I had to, because that's how I raised my boy. And like I say, you know, I even said it on set, you know, I didn't raise my boy to curl up in a corner and say, poor, poor, pitiful me. So I got up off my keister and I did it. And I still do it. You know, even in the middle of summer and everything else, you know, it doesn't matter. Time of year or anything else, doesn't have to be Christmas time. I get people that call me in July, hey, the kids are being bad. No, okay. And I'll go throw my red shirt on and I'll throw a hat on. I'm like, okay, video time. And I face chat them. And boy, do they straighten out whenever they see Santa. So they don't want reindeer poop for Christmas.
Yeah. Another thing, you know, like, I didn't expect the Santa Claus saga story to continue after you lost your son. I didn't think the story would continue, and I didn't know how you would continue on. And then, miraculously, you were Santa Claus, you were out in the community, despite publicly losing your son, and all of us praying for you and Garrett while you're on your way to the hospital, and then, you know, finding out on social media that he passed away, and seeing online, you know, your grieving process. And then you were Santa Claus. And so it's like the story changed in such a way that it became so much more powerful, and I'd say even more important. Like, it was interesting, like the Santa Claus that people really need, and whenever they're depressed or, you know, in times of need. But now it was the Santa Claus who was also not just benevolent or generous to people who need it, but also was self-sacrificing because you had experienced so much grief and hardship and overcame your own depression to still help those in need. And so now it was like it became like a redemption story. And, you know, it still took another, you know, it's 6 years since Garrett passed away 3 days ago. And so it still took another 4 years to figure out the screenplay.
Yeah.
And then, you know, getting Danny Roebuck on board and him working on the script with me and getting the film actually made. And so it's been, and when did we first start talking about this at Isaac's wedding?
Yeah.
What was that? Like 8 years ago?
9?
9 years ago?
Yeah, I think it was 9.
So any filmmakers out there, making a film can sometimes take a long time, and sometimes it just has to. You know, like life is wild.
Well, it gave you the basis for the actual heart of the story.
Yeah.
Really.
Yep.
You know, in your movie, of course, in Saint Nick of Bethlehem, you know, the son had already passed previously.
Right.
Whereas in mine, you know, my real life, you know, Garrett was there. He saw me being Santa Claus.
Yeah.
And he thought I was nutty and a frickin' fruitcake. Dad, why you want to do that? I said, because it makes people happy. And, you know, the sorrow and everything that he and I had, you know, just in our life of me separating from my previous wife, and at 37 years old, moving back in with your parents, with your 12-year-old son, you know, boy, did I feel like a success.
Not.
You know, and then, you know, my mom passed away in 2016, And then Gina and I really started getting our relationship back together, which was, what your original basis of your movie, the Hallmark movie was, per se, was the relationship of people at, 14 and 12 getting back together 32 years later.
And that storyline really is still quite well preserved. Even like that meet cute when you do see the movie when it comes out December 1st worldwide, is preserved. Like, it really happened like that. In a parking lot, hadn't seen each other since high school.
Yep.
And you saw each other and were instantly like, I know those eyes, right?
Yeah, she had hollered to me because I hadn't seen her in, I think it was 32 years. Might have been 28 years. I don't know. It was a lifetime. Yeah. She'd hollered at me from across the parking lot, putting her mom in the van out of her wheelchair. I was putting my mom in her van out of the wheelchair. And she hollered at me across the parking lot, and I hadn't seen her in so many years, and 4 children later. I had no clue who she was when she walked up and looked at me. And then the instant that she did look at me, I saw her eyes, and that was the biggest thing that I was always attracted to with her, because she has the most drop-dead gorgeous blue eyes. And we, so then we went out to dinner and had exchanged our stories from graduation on through up to that point and everything, and found out we were both going through the divorce and everything. And it's like, well, and at that point in time, I was like, yeah, no, I don't even want a relationship, because she already stomped my heart in the dirt when I was 14, dumping me and going with my best friend. So then, I was like, yeah, but we started talking and everything, and kind of started rehabbing each other, through the BS that life handed us. And it just kind of happened one day. It's like, hey, she even asked me, she said, you want to go out? And for months I ghosted her because I didn't want her to rip my heart out again. I don't think I could have taken it again. And after a few months of ghosting her, then I even told her, because she'd come up to the house, and I said, I don't want to get my heart broke again. I said, I don't know if I could take it. Because, my previous wife I had been with for 22 years.
Wow.
From when I was a junior in high school, and I always figured, I was going to be married once, just like my mom and dad were. I had never anticipated getting married again. Yeah, I was willing to do whatever needed to be done to be able to save my other marriage. But it takes 2 to save a marriage. And my previous wife didn't want to. She wanted to trash it. And she regrets it now, unfortunately for her, but, And other steps, of course, have happened since Garrett's passing that I won't even talk to her anymore. And I'm not going to. I'll forgive her for what she did, but I won't forget her. And I'm not going to give her that opportunity to come back into my life. All right. So, I have to forgive her, because that's what God's word tells us to do. And, even though I don't go to church or whatever, like I say, I am a very strong man of faith. I know there is a God. I have been proven, with certain things that I've done in my past, that there's definitely a God. And, that was my biggest thing. Whenever Garrett passed away, I was angry with God for taking my boy. It was the only one I had.
Yeah.
And my boy was my life. And, the question even still rises, why? I don't know why. But I guarantee you, the day that death comes knocking at my door, whether it's Gabriel or, the skeleton or whatever it may be, none of us know that, and we're only going to know it once. But I guarantee you, the day they show up for me, I'm going to punch them right in the head for taking my boy before me. That I'm going to say, tell me, show me my boy. I want to see my boy. And that's going to be, I know there's going to be a lot of maybe sad people, because of my Santa thing. But they'll be like, oh, bummer, we don't have Santa anymore. But I don't want anybody shedding any tears the day I die, because it's not going to be a sad day, because I'll get to see Garrett again. So it's going to be a day of celebration. And that's what everybody can raise up their beer that day and sit and have a toast and say, yeah, that stupid son of a gun anyway for what he was doing. Yeah, I'm keeping my mouth from my trucker mouth, so. But, it's what I had to do. It's what I've always done my whole life. And even now, I do what I have to. I don't do what's always expected of me of society, because I don't care what, the Joneses next door think of me or anything else. But, all kids are innocent. And they're even innocent in God's eyes. So why shouldn't they be happy just because their mom and dad are maybe poor, or their mom and dad struggle? Or, the one that still I think about all the time was a little girl in a school. I'm not going to say her name. But she came up, I went to visit her at school as Santa. And she came up, she said, "Oh, I want my daddy home for Christmas." And of course, right away, I'm thinking, oh, okay, her dad's in the military. He's a gas well worker. Maybe he's a truck driver. He spends time on. Now, dad was in prison for dealing drugs. And how do you do that to an 8-year-old kid to say, well, gee whiz, sorry about your dad's luck, but, he just broke your heart. And I wanted to break down in instant tears there, but I can't. I'm Santa Claus. I'm happy. I have to be happy. I have to be joyous. I have to have the feeling of the season. And so I told her, I said, unfortunately, your daddy made some bad decisions and he has to pay for those bad decisions, but why don't you go home and write your daddy a letter and mail it to him? I said, I'll talk to the people in the prison, but I can't make you any promises. And I'll never forget that as long as I live, because that was, besides the great nephew that asked for the roses on Christmas morning, that's now it's the third hardest thing I've ever done as Santa, because the first one was, 7 weeks after Garrett passed, was putting the suit back on and putting a smile on my face, even though my heart was ripped out. It's what I had to do. I had to.
Once you continued putting on the suit and you continued in some ways even finding new purpose in being Santa Claus after losing Garrett, something I struggled with after making Shooting Heroin is I met so many parents who had lost their kids, to a drug overdose.
Yep.
And the parents were literally, that I interviewed in preparation for the film, they just never recovered. They had maybe lost their son or daughter years ago or 10 years ago, and their entire life froze, and they never moved on from that point of losing their child. And I always wished in Shooting Heroin I had given or found a way to give hope to those parents, or somehow to inspire them that there is life after death. And then whenever, your tragedy happened, I realized that Saint Nick is a story that inspires people, that there's still meaning to life after you lose everything.
There is. And that's what, yourself, as well as many other people say about, how miraculous it is for what I have done and what I continue to do. To me, it's not miraculous. There's nothing strong about me. My heart rips out every single day for my boy. There's not a day goes by I don't think of him.
But what do you think it is that's different? Because a lot of people in your situation, and I know these people and I know these parents, they do, maybe they don't kill themselves, but they essentially stop living. Some do kill themselves. Some either, go to substance abuse, or they give up, or they quit life, they quit their job. They don't do anything. But you do Santa Claus harder than ever.
Yep.
You just bought this home and you're renovating it beautifully with your own 2 hands and your family. You're teaching the next generation how to be truck drivers, and you're working every day. And I know you carry this incredible burden, but you're not losing steam while carrying this burden. And I think that is miraculous, because I think depression and loss, having just gone through it myself with losing my second daughter, it's a tremendous weight that makes it feel like doing everything is 10 times harder or 1,000 times harder.
It is harder. It is. But the thing is, you still have a purpose in this life. Your purpose is to put stories out here for people. Real life slap you in the face, kick you in the balls stories. Mm-hmm. That's what you do. And they're awesome stories for those people that, have been through the situation, to maybe get them to open their eyes, because these people aren't going to come out of their drug addiction. They're not going to come out of their alcohol addiction, or they're not going to come out of their depression unless something in life slaps them. And you have to still have purpose in life. So I have taken my purpose of raising my son to be a successful, good person in the world and put it into being Santa. I still have purpose in that. I still have a purpose in seeing the kids smile. And even as grown adults, and you've heard me even say it to you, and I say it to everybody, I am Santa Claus. Because what else does Santa do besides break into your house and leave presents? And you just did it. You smile and you get happy. You start thinking about, the Christmases past when you had the magic of Christmas and of Santa and of, that one special toy that you wanted so bad that your mom and dad found a way to get it for you. Could your mom and dad always afford that? Maybe, maybe not. It all depended on, your life that you had. But that's what makes, the Christmas season special, is that magic and how it made you feel. And even as grown adults, I don't care how old they are, when I tell them that, they sit and they get a little smile and a little smirk on their face. And I'll say, there you go, you're doing it right now. I said, so therefore I am Santa Claus. I'm not magic, but I give that magic back to people to relive from their childhood. And my photos and everything that I do with Dan and Mallory and all the other photographers that I work with, someday they'll be going through, family members will be going through and searching and, might be 50, 70 years from now, and I'm not here anymore. I don't have my legacy of my son. And they'll be like, hey, Grandpa, where'd you get this picture from Santa? And then they're going to sit and think, or hey, Grandpa, who's this with Santa? Oh, that's me when I was little. And then that is going to instantly take that person back to that childhood, to those happy thoughts, to that memory. What kind of better hope can we leave behind for a story? And if we would all try to just do that, do something. Sometimes I spend a pile of money, and I have spent a pile of money out of my own pocket to be able to give, that memory or to give people that happiness. Sometimes I don't have it to give. All I can do is offer them a smile and, a Merry Christmas. With the way things are today in society, it's getting tougher and tougher. But I'm still not going to quit. I'm going to go harder. I'm going to throw $17,000 at a pickup for 2.5 years and sitting right around town in my Santa suit and have Saint Nick Express on the side of my boy's old truck. Garrett always wanted to have a show car, something to have people to look at. Well, I did it with his.
Mm-hmm.
I made his into that. And, your representation that you had in the movie, with the Christmas ornament and everything, Garrett's car was a 55 Chevy Bel Air. That was his dream car. That's what he always wanted. And it happened to be red and white. And you put a red and white truck in the movie, and I'm just sitting there like, man, and the tears are going, and like, jerk.
And I didn't even know that,
No. And that's the ironic thing, with you and Danny doing so many things in that movie that I didn't know till I saw the movie. The girl in the hospital, Chloe.
Yeah.
And whenever you were filming that scene,
Yeah.
mine was Zoe.
Yeah.
Was the 17-year-old girl that was going to pass away from cancer, and giving her family these Christmas memories, because I knew once she was gone that they,
And she did?
yeah,
Pass away.
and it was 4 months after Christmas. And so, I'm sure that whenever every Christmas now, whenever the family pulls out those photos and the Christmas ornaments and everything, whatever they got, I had no idea. I didn't ask. I just paid for it. I said, you get whatever you want. And, they'll look at it and they'll cry. And then they'll think back to that session and the fun that we had that day and everything, and they'll smile. No different than you whenever your second daughter was born. How proud were you to hold her that first 5 minutes?
Yeah.
And you just did it. You just smiled. Now, unfortunately for you, you lost her 8 hours later.
Yeah.
You didn't have the chance to get to know the type of person that she was going to be. God took her from you for whatever that reason may be. He had a reason. And someday we'll get to ask. Yeah. But I guarantee you, your daughter's still watching you. So you damn well better do what's right.
Right.
Because she's watching. You know, that's my daddy. So you got to make her proud. Because she's watching you. Just like Garrett's watching me. So I got to make him proud. I got to show him. No matter what life hands at you, you keep going.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's awful funny, when we started the whole deal with Sad Santa.
Yeah.
And you're interviewing me, how hard it was for me to do it. And then, what, a year later?
Yeah.
You're going through the same situation.
Yep.
And you still battle it every day. And you know what? You're going to battle it till the day you give up your battle, too.
Mm-hmm.
You and McKenna both. But we still have to do purpose.
Yeah.
McKenna does it with her weddings and her giving people their dream day.
Mm-hmm.
She's doing no different than what I am. And you're doing it with your movies.
Yeah.
So it's not miraculous, anything that I do. It's not. Not in my opinion.
It seems miraculous.
No. How often have you thought about it since
I thought about what?
me and what I do since what happened to you?
Often.
Exactly.
Like every day. And I was thinking about it the whole time in the hospital. And how I didn't want to join your club.
Yeah.
And, if I could carry on as well as you have these past 6 years. So, because also, I think not only publicly losing Garrett and then publicly being Santa Claus, but you also publicly grieve well. On Facebook, you share that it's the anniversary of his death, his birthday, something Garrett would love. You even hand out some of Garrett's and have been handing out Garrett's toys to kids as Santa Claus.
5 Christmases.
And I think that's really healthy for grieving people, grieving parents, which I'm a club member of now, unfortunately. But I think that's like a ministry in itself. Because a lot of people don't talk about grieving. And when you don't talk about it, I think it just makes it worse.
Yeah, it is worse. Absolutely. There is no time, and I don't care what people say, whether it's your parents, which I have since lost both of mine. Gina has lost both of hers. Your grandparents, a person who raised you, you might be adopted or whatever else. When you lose that person, you lose your foundation. Well, then you have to make your own foundation, whatever it may be. And unfortunately, after I lost Garrett, I found a couple of friends of mine who had been through it, and I never knew it, And even people publicly, whenever I posted it up on Facebook, they don't see, they didn't see the nights that I went to sleep bawling, because he wasn't there anymore. And my job as a father is to protect my son, and I couldn't do it that day. I wasn't there for him when he needed me most. And that's what my family foundation has been. So if I couldn't protect my son, maybe I had to come protect somebody else's. Or somebody or my other friends who have lost their child, as you asked.
Yeah.
If me sharing my story, sharing my feelings, if that helps just one person to not look for answers at a bottle, not look for answers in a needle, whether it's to go to counseling. I've never gone to counseling, Fred, but that's part of my dad in me, because my dad was this big heart up.
Go to Men Don't Cry, Men Don't Say I Love You.
When I lost my dad when I was 52, one time in my life he told me he loved me. And that was shortly after Garrett passed away. Wow, it's the only time my dad ever told me that he loved me. Once. And he and I had a conversation about it after that. Because I told Garrett I love him all the time.
Yeah.
I tell everybody I love them all the time. Because I do. I have a love for everybody. I want people to know how I feel. And my dad even said, my generation, we didn't do that. That's not, my dad never said he was proud of me. But I knew he was. He loved Christmas. My dad was all gaga over Christmas, even though he
Big bad burly, Marine.
you don't show feelings. He loved Christmas. So once I started with the Santa stuff, and I actually got pretty serious about it and became a decent looking Santa instead of some, vagabond off the street Santa. And I just shared this story with you earlier. My birthday's in the middle of November, and every year for my birthday, I'd get a fishing lure, and he'd hand me an envelope with $500 cash in it. Here, use that this year for your Santa stuff. If you tell anybody I did that, I'll deny it. But, he in his own way, he also wanted to share, with everybody. And, he just did it behind the scenes, behind the camera, much like a director. Yeah. He didn't want to be put into the public eye. I don't care. I don't have any dignity. I'll let people see me ball. I'm not that proud. Because like I said, we're all battling in our own battles. Who knows what it may be? It might be, your family member that is now, has dementia. That's a hard battle. My grandmother went through it, So it's hard to say, but we all have our own battles. We just have to figure out, okay, this isn't going to be forever. None of us are going to be here forever. My name's not Jesus Christ. I'm not eternal. So, someday it's going to end.
Mm-hmm.
And then hopefully I've done a good enough job that God says, step on in, my good and faithful servant. I hope.
You have.
So we'll see.
And he has for you.
Yeah. I'd say he's got to have some plan. For some reason, he still keeps me around.
Seemingly for both of us.
And, with the new house and everything here, we're in the center of town. We're right here where everybody can see us and see what we're doing. And, why not put some of the worst parts of our life out there for people to know, hey, you know what? I'm not the only one going through this struggle.
Yeah.
Regardless of what it may be, because that's what happens is, everybody always feels so alone in the battle.
Yep.
And I've had numerous conversations with people after, Garrett and whatnot that, I hope in some way that I give them hope, to know that, well, they're, tomorrow's going to be here. It will. Will tomorrow be better than today? That's up to us. We have to make it. We have to make tomorrow better. And how do we do that? We all have to look inside of us and make tomorrow better that way. Whether it is through, preaching the word of God, or whether it is through, showing people how to live through the hardships of life. Whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
So you got to do something. I'm not going to curl up in a corner. I'm not a quitter. So what do you do?
So since we started recording the documentary, which we started recording that 2 years ago.
Yep.
And now here we are 2 years later in 2025, and the film was about to come out in another theatrical release, and now it's about to come out nationwide and worldwide. We have a couple international releases planned for this year. But you've had the experience last Christmas in 2024, seeing your story told in a fictional way, but so many parallels, and obviously based on you and Garrett and Gina. But what's the experience been like, having your life story told in a movie?
For some, fat guy podunk PA, it was, to watch it play out on the screen. It's like, that's not my life, but it was my life.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, you took some Hollywood freedom with some things and everything, but you had to, because, my life's boring.
So there's a lot of information. We got 90 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of things and emotions and everything that have been done out for the last 14 years or whatever it's been since you and I've known each other.
Yeah.
That you do have to try to cram into, 92 minutes or whatever the movie is. I think it's 92 if I'm not mistaken. So how do you put that all in there? Me going to the hospital the very first year, literally the day I bought my El Cheapo Santa suit.
Yep.
And going to visit my wife because she was in the hospital.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't kids in a cancer ward, but I have since done that.
Yeah.
Or going to the retirement home and seeing people that have dementia, in their 80s and 90s, that maybe their family forgets about them, and to see their face light up whenever I come in as Santa. or the special needs kids that I go and see that, they're in their own little world most of the time. And, and some of the special needs kids that I go see, that their world sucks, due to their circumstances that, they live in. If I can, make them smile, by damned, I've done a good job, and those are all the things I have done since, even since you're like, oh, that is such a cool story. And I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. Nobody's going to, want to see that or ever want to do that. And you just, you took 14 years and crammed it into, like I said, 92 minutes. Yeah. And, to see that play out on screen, it's like, and some of the things that you put on screen came back and smacked me in the face with the memory of it. Going into the hospital and, Danny's dancing, and the guy's looking at him like, what the heck is wrong with you? That's happened, where I've done that. And, because, I just passed somebody on the street or whatever else, and I made them smile and made them laugh, and they go away with they're maybe walking a little bit straighter, or, you can tell you gave them something to look forward to. And I've done that dance. And then to see it play, and I never told you about that.
Yeah.
And like I say, between Chloe and Zoe and so many of the similarities, and it's like, yeah, well, for some reason this is meant to be, and I only hope that, and I always told even people last year, after seeing the movie that opened on my birthday, on mine and Gina's birthday, it'll make you laugh, it'll make you cry, it'll make you laugh, it'll make you cry, it'll make you laugh, it'll make you cry, and then it'll make you laugh, and then you go home feeling good.
Yeah.
And that's, you can't do a better job as a storyteller than that, in my opinion. I don't care, was, Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark, was that a realistic movie? No. Even all the Hallmark movies and everything that you always see. No, they don't always end up together. They don't always end up happy and everything else. That doesn't show the hardships of life. Your movie showed the hardships of life and how you come out of it, out of the tunnel, out of the darkness, and feel better. Yeah. And you get the sun, the sunshine on your face. And, there is light at the end of that tunnel. Sometimes it may only be a pin, but there is light. I'm not saying you're not going to come out of the tunnel and then end up into another one, because it does. But, you've just got to keep going. You can't quit. We're not made to be quitters. No. And, like I said, I don't go to church and everything. I don't read my Bible the way that I should, and I cuss a heck of a lot more than I should.
Me too.
But, did Christ give up on us when he was on the cross? Even moments before he passed away, so God forgive them for and they know not what they do.
Yeah.
He didn't give up on us. So how can we give up?
Right.
I could not call myself a Christian if I gave up.
Yeah.
I could. I have to have that faith. I have to have the hard faith.
Yep.
And that's, whenever you came about, because, I know hard faith was in its conceptions and everything whenever you did Generational Sins. And Generational Sins, when I was in it, and then I saw that movie and everything, it hit me hard, because, like, holy cow, so many people in our area have lived through that. Shooting heroin, the same thing, it's, you tell the hard stories.
Yeah.
And it's not, gee golly, happy, and, it's, life isn't that way, unfortunately. I mean, I wish it was.
Yeah.
I wish it was too, David Make, maybe it would make the world a better place, but maybe if more people would tell the true stories of life, we could make this world a better place.
Yeah.
But and I'm not saying you have to go out and do what I do and do it year in and year out, spend pretty much, a year's salary of, my Santa suit now, between, friends of mine gave me my belt. I just bought a new buckle last year after 5 years, and the boots, I keep trying to add to it every year to make it more authentic. The truck that took me 2 years, from the purchase price of the truck to all the parts and everything, and, it took me 2.5 years. I had to have that goal. And, now I ride around in the truck, even whether it's if I'm going to a car show, and the kids see me there and they're like,
Saint Nick Express.
and they see my picture in the Santa suit on the hood, and there I am in my little summer Santa shirt, you know, and Santa's here. And then they hide behind their parents' leg or whatever else because, you know, Santa's not supposed to be out in July. Why not? Santa's a person too.
Yeah. And you're a full-time Santa.
Yeah.
Because you're the real Santa.
I am Santa Claus. You know, and that's what and during the season, whenever me, you know, and people do, they look at me like I'm nuts. Well, I am nuts. My mom was nuts. You know, she, you know, made up a red blouse one year and dressed it up, and this was way before, you know, dressing up, you know, crazy was a thing. You know, I still have the shirt. She put little pink and green and red and white pom-poms all over it, sewed them in, and big sequins and bells, and she went to school looking like a Christmas tree. It made it, you know, made her kids feel good, and everybody's like, Mrs. Smith, you're nuts. And she said, yep, but I'm happy. Yeah, I'm nuts, but I'm happy. You know, I have my select few friends that I have, you know, and one thing my dad always told me, you know, if you can count on one hand the great friends that you have, you know, on one hand, you have done something very successful.
Yep.
And I'm pretty damn lucky because I've got more than that. I know probably at least a dozen people that if I called right now and said, hey, I need some help, regardless of what it may be, lifting something heavy, it may be, you know, I need somebody to talk to. I've got it. I had that support system.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, the basis, you know, for why I keep trying to do what I'm doing as well is, you know, to give people that base, you know, give them a foundation of, because we all hit rock bottom. What are you going to do? You're going to sit at rock bottom and stay there? Man, you know, God didn't give up on us. So I'm not going to give up on life either. Oh, okay. I'm all done being philosophical. With what I do now with teaching people to drive truck, is so that they can go be successful, make a decent living, whether they choose to stay here in Central P. I can go anywhere in the country. I don't care where it is. And I can have a job in 5 minutes. Literally. And now, is it a job that I may like? I don't know. I'm not going to know unless I try. But, you know, I take some of these same students, regardless of whether they're 18 years old or whether they are 72 years old. They're, you know, they need a change in their life. They want to create stability. And I take those same people on the same exact road that I taught Garrett how to drive my Peterbilt on when he was 11 years old. And my only regret from that aspect of it is I wasn't as patient with Garrett as I am now. I've learned to become patient with trying to get him to do it the right way. And I pretty much peeled Garrett's ass whenever he would screw it up. But at 11 years old, he could drive a tractor trailer. He could shift it. He could take it down the road. Before he could talk, he could drive.
Wow.
I had him a little pull start lawnmower that I used to have. I disconnected the blade so I couldn't cut his leg off or anything. And I'd go out and I'd fire it up and hey, there you go. 3 years old, he couldn't even talk yet. He'd go out and drive around out in the middle of the woods.
What's the biggest thing you've learned in this whole experience of making this movie about your life? I know you haven't seen the documentary yet, but...
Not yet. You may feel simple, you know, you may feel like a nobody or anything else, but that maybe you can, you know. I gotta think of the words for it. We're all somebody.
Yeah.
You know, I don't live in Hollywood, you know, and you know, you rub elbows with these people and everything else. You know what? They put their pants on one leg at a time, just like I do. And that's something that I did with Garrett for so many years. You know, we would meet the NFL athletes, you know, star athletes, multi-millionaires. And you want to know what? They're people too. They're just like us. Yeah, okay, so they might have, you know, $500,000 gold chain on their neck. Yep. You know, and the one thing that I loved about Latrobe, taking Garrett down there, and in my opinion, the man will be, you know, my hero to me is like Taylor. We went down the 1 year. It was the first year right after my divorce, and I was just looking for something to get Garrett to do to, you know, kind of get over the hump of, you know, mom and dad separating and everything. And Ike Taylor sat down at a picnic table with Garrett and sat and talked to him for about 20 minutes.
Aw.
And then we went down the next year. And I'll never forget it as long as I live. Garrett's sitting there, he's laying back on the picnic table like this, looking down over the practice fields at Latrobe. And the players and everything were done, and I'm BSing with my NFL buddies. And we're just sitting there, and they're having their player interviews. And while the other players were being interviewed, Ike Taylor came up onto the stool on the opposite side of Garrett. Garrett never saw him coming. Stepped up on the top, slapped him on the back, and said, "Hey, Garrett, how's it going?" A year later, and Ike Taylor remembered my boy's name.
Aw.
And that was, to Garrett, that was huge.
I bet.
Because he had gotten dissed by an NFL player the year before, who he looked up to very much and who he idolized. And that kind of broke his heart the year before. But then I came by and put all of that faith back in it. And, you know, we as people can do that. And I mean, I suppose that's the biggest thing I've learned is, you know, that I have given people that faith. Do I think I'm justified for it? Nope. I fall short of it every single day. But, you know, if like I said, and I've said it already during the interview here, you know, if just one person, if it helps just one person, then it's all worth it. I'll sit and bawl my eyeballs out and make an idiot out of myself all the time for that, you know, because that's what we're supposed to do. And, you know, like you say, I don't read the Bible, but I know there's a whole bunch of verses in there that, you know, they tell us to sacrifice for others.
Any final words?
Just find whatever makes you happy. You know, I just went up and, you know, I drove 6 hours to be able to go see my buddy's boy, whom I've known since he was like 7 or 8 years old, I forget. To go watch him play a college football game, and I enjoyed the living snot. I didn't watch anything else that was going on the field besides that kid play, because he's very passionate about it. Did he play a perfect game? Nope. Did I tell him he played a perfect game? Hell no. I told him every single time that he screwed up. But, you know, that's how he's going to build. That's how he's going to be your teacher. Yeah. You know, I mean, that's, you know, I told him, you know, hey, I love you to death, but yeah, you screwed this one up, you screwed this one up, you screwed this one. You know, can I play? Not anymore. You know, could I have ever done what he did? Nope. You know, so I idolize him for doing something that I couldn't, that I wasn't able to do or that I couldn't do. And he's doing a damn good job at it. Is he perfect? Nope. Are you perfect? No. And I know whoever's watching this ain't perfect. Nope. And if you think you are, you're part of the problem. Yeah. You know, so we all have to look inside and just find what makes us happy.
Yeah.
And try to do something to just make one other person happy. If one person a year, just one person, you know, joy is something that is everlasting.
Yeah.
It will outlive everything else, and regardless. So, yeah, hopefully everybody finds joy. Find something that gives you joy. Even doesn't mean you still don't have to be miserable or hurting or anything else, but you still have to find joy. Like go on a cooking show.
Thank you, Alan.
God, we've done that for almost an hour.
We've done this for an hour.
And you're going to shorten it up to about, what, 5 minutes?
To about 40 probably minutes.
Oh, okay.
Catch Alan on the red carpet at the Roland Theater, November 7th. Also catch Alan at the Lehigh Valley Roxy Theater the following weekend on November, is that 14th?
Which will be exactly 3 days before my birthday from whenever we released Saint Nick of Bethlehem last year.
And then December 1st, tentatively, we'll have this confirmed, but December 1st, Saint Nick will be available on all home video and streaming, so you'll be able to finally see Saint Nick at home, domestically and soon also internationally. Sad Santa and the Healing Power of Giving, the documentary about Alan Smith and Gina and their life together, will come out hopefully this year if I can find the purpose to finally get it done, which I'm feeling inspired.
After this, if you're not, we got problems.
I know. I feel very inspired, actually. So that's why Pete made the documentary. It's not this.
I was just gonna say,
Depending on how good the sound is.
For a creation this morning, I'll be our Eon on the morning.
and hey, I finished it. Here it is. Right, I'm pretty sure that's what you did with Saint Nick. Hey, here's the script. Read over it. What do you think? And I get up at 6 o'clock in the morning. I'm looking at it all cross-eyed. Go, you're knucking futs.
It's been a hell of a journey.
It has been.
We'll see if there's a sequel.
Yeah. I don't know if anything, miraculous can happen from here on out, but,
Santa moves into a funeral home and makes it into Santa's workshop. The redemption continues. Out of death brings life.
That's right.
Sunshine Manor.
Take something that's, depressing and sad and everything else and turn it around and make it happy.
That is kind of a superpower of yours.
Not mine. That's the boss.
Oh, you two together.
Well, that's just it. Together we are, kind of impenetrable.
Yeah, it's good.
Anyway.
Good team.
Yeah.
Oh, Alan, thank you for your time. Thank you for being Santa. Thank you for being a willing inspiration for Saint Nick.
I don't know if all the times was well. No, for Saint Nick, yeah, I was willing for all of it. For Sad Santa, that wasn't always willing. It was tough. Not unlike here, but, it's one of those deals too. There are some things that just have to be said and have to be shared.
Yeah. Thanks for doing it. Love you, brother. I love you, brother. We did it. Cheers. To beers, tears, and Santa Claus.
Yep. Thanks so much for listening to the Hard Faith podcast. Please subscribe and share. Visit hardfaith.org to learn more.